Hello YouTube, my name is Isabella and today I'm going to be doing my September wrap-up. Now, September was a little bit of a dicey reading month for me. I did manage to complete 5 books, although 2 of them were audiobooks and 2 of them I actually desperately finished in the last few days of September because I was concerned I wasn't gonna have enough stuff to talk about in a wrap-up. So that's not the greatest motivations to be reading, but I did manage to find a new all-time favorite book and I'm really excited to share it with you. So the first book I finished was Warcross by Marie Lu. Warcross is a book about a girl named Emika Chen who is a bounty hunter, hard on her luck, struggling to get by. In this world, this crazy game called Warcross has taken over the nation. The creator of this thing made VR, and with the VR comes the game Warcross, which sweeps the nation by storm. And so she ends up getting involved with the games in a way she didn't entirely want, and then gets hired on as a bounty hunter because there is a problem that the creator needs her to hunt down and basically kind of stop. This book is action-packed, full of really fun characters. I actually did a full review, so I will leave a link to it down below if you want to hear my full thoughts. I at first wasn't completely sold on the game of Warcross because I found it to be very confusing, but once I warmed up to it, I thought that was pretty cool. However, I thought this book was going to take a really unique turn and twist on the story, but it kind of fell into a little bit of a predictable thing near the end. I do think the sequel is going to be kick-ass, from start to finish. I gave Warcross 4 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was one of the ones I listened to on audio, and it was If I Was Your Girl by Meredith Russo. If I Was Your Girl is an Own Voices story about a trans girl who, after she transitions, moves in with her dad to start a new high school, basically to get a fresh start and to finally be living the life that she wants to be living. This is a contemporary romance that deals with some really, really tough topics. I would put a trigger warning for suicide, rape, and just general violence, but that's not really what this book is about. For the most part, it's a very lighthearted, warm, nice story about a girl and a boy falling in love. And I really, really enjoyed this book. I really, really liked the romance between our two main characters. For the most part, there was one thing that happens near the end that I was not a fan of, but I also like that this book doesn't just focus on the romantic relationship, it focuses on all of Amanda's relationship. It focuses on just girl friendships, and it has a really nice tight-knit female friendship group that Amanda becomes a part of, and I really, really like that. And it discusses the difficult relationship she has with her father. This book is set in the South, which I don't think anyone ever mentions, and it also deals a lot with religion. Amanda still believes in God, and she has a pretty decent relationship with her, not her religion, but with her spiritual stuff. Even though I'm not a religious person, but I found that to be a refreshing take on the narrative that a lot of people typically choose to go elsewhere with it. In my Goodreads post, I linked to a few Own Voices reviewers, so I really, really think you should check those out as well, so I will leave a link to that. But for the most part, I thought this book was fantastically done. I do think you could tell that this book was a debut. There was a couple plot things, and even the writing style could be a little lacking sometimes. That in no means takes away how much I enjoyed the story or even really the importance of the story. I ended up giving If I Was Your Girl 4 out of 5 stars. The next book I read I also listened to on audio, and it was Walk Unearth a Stranger by Rae Carson. Now this book actually has a pretty low rating on Goodreads, and I understand why, but then I also enjoyed myself while reading it, and it's just a confusing time in general. This book is set in the Gold Rush era, and it is about a girl named Leah who has the magical ability to sense gold, and After her parents are murdered, that's not a spoiler, it happens like right at the beginning of the book. After her parents are murdered, she decides that she's gonna head west and try and make a life out on her own, and she actually dresses up as a boy to do so. I never really connected so much to Leah as our main character. I thought she was decent, but there was something about her that I can't quite pinpoint that I didn't love. My biggest complaint of this book is while I liked the setting and I liked the journey aspect, and even that Rae Carson really went into detail and you could tell how well researched this book was. For like the majority of this novel, Leah is dressed up and acting as a boy, and so she has to deal with stuff like periods and going to the bathroom like very discreetly, and it is something that so many authors like forget about, and I'm glad that Rae Carson made this book like a very authentic feeling to what that time period would be, and Leah's struggles. I very much appreciated that. But this book drags a few times. You needed to show how difficult and long and arduous this journey was, but also sometimes I wanted it to be sped up a little bit. I also really appreciated how diverse this story would be, and in a historical novel, I had no idea how that would work or pan out very well, but I think Rae Carson did, for the most part, a good job. I do know that some people had some complaints with how Native Americans were portrayed in this book, so I will try my best to find some Own Voices reviews. I also wasn't the biggest fan of the love interest. He just falls into the category of like, should stay friends, shouldn't ever try and be more than that. I just don't like him that much. I think my review of this came out slightly more confusing than I wanted it to be, but I did give Walk on Earth a Stranger 3.5 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was Jane Unlimited by Kristin Cashore, and this book is very complicated to explain and even more complicated to review. Jane Unlimited follows our main character Jane, who after she loses her aunt, who was like her guardian because her parents had passed away, gets invited to go to this mansion place of an old acquaintance, and she decides to go because her aunt made her promise that if she was ever invited there, to go. At one point in time when Jane is there, she's faced with a choice with 5 different outcomes. This book very interestingly goes through each decision and what the outcome of each one would be. And like the even cooler part is it never sticks to one genre. It goes, there's contemporary and horror and fantasy, and I just think this book is overall just like one of the most unique books I've read. Can't really review the plot at all without A, sounding like an idiot, and B, confusing everyone, because unless you've read it, it's really difficult to understand. But I will say that I really liked Jane. She was such a dynamic character, and very interestingly, I found that through each of the stories you got to see a slightly different, not version of Jane, but a slightly different aspect of Jane and her character, so she became a really fully fledged main character, and I very much enjoyed that. There's also this budding romance that happens between Jane and another girl that I really liked, and I wish the book could have explored more from, but because of the way the narrative plays out, it can't quite like be explored as much as I wanted it to be, but I really liked that little relationship that was formed. I was really invested in it. So all in all, I gave Jane Unlimited 4 out of 5 stars. The next and final book has become one of my new all-time favorite books. I loved it to pieces, and I just totally picked it up on a whim. The book was A Thousand Splendid Suns by Khaled Hosseini. I went into this book knowing absolutely nothing other than the fact that it was set in the Middle East, and it paid off for me, but I'll give you a little bit more to go on. This book is a very character-driven book focused on 2 women and how their lives intersect. It is set, I believe it starts in like 1970 all the way up to 2000-ish. It painstakingly shows the political climate of Afghanistan and how much it changes, and just I had no idea how brutal it was during certain times, during like very recently in Afghanistan's history. I just was ignorant of that. I love this book so much because of the relationship that forms between these two women. They're very unlikely friends, and it just, something about their friendship and love for one another just melted my heart. These women have go through some of the most difficult things I've ever read from. It's just, this book is difficult to read at some points, and I would put a trigger warning for domestic abuse especially. Like, there are some passages that I found sickening and super, super, super difficult to read. I thought it was so beautifully written. I really liked Husseini's writing style, and funnily enough, this book has restored my faith in men writing female characters. He did such a good job with these two women because recently I've been kind of put off by a lot of the female characters that men tend to write, but he did it so very well, and he has an organization to help the people of Afghanistan, so you can tell that this book comes from a place of love. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. I'm sure you probably guessed it, and this is one of my top contenders for book of the year. So those were the 5 books I read in September. Let me know if you've read any or if you plan to read any. I would love to know down in the comments, and thank you so much for watching. We'll see you again very soon. Bye!